All right. What's up, kid?
Okay, sound check.
I'm getting ready. Sound check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You good? Is that
Okay,
good?
perfect.
Huh?
Perfect. We can get started.
Okay, am I ready?
Yes, sir.
I start now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, here we go. Hey, y'all. This is Mark G. Abolitionist on the air with you at KEXU 96.1 FM LP, Revolution Radio, where we explore the connection between imperial war and incarceration. I don't limit myself to being a prison abolitionist because there are more structures and institutions that I seek to abolish than just incarceration. For example, white supremacy and racism, two different things. Male supremacy and patriarchy, two different things. Class supremacy and wage oppression, two different things. And imperial war. Yes, imperial war is an institution of the American Empire. Let me be very clear. The U.S. military is an institution, as we all know well. However, it serves the institution of imperial war. The need for imperial conquest shapes and defines the U.S. military. In fact, the European settler need for the conquest and theft of Indian land made the development of a military necessary. All who opposed or resisted were either killed or imprisoned. The first reservations were prisons. I'm going to talk about Vietnam. Y'all make sure you also hear Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine, any and every inner city in America. He was a 9 or 10-year-old boy begging for food on the side of the road like hundreds of others. I was riding shotgun in a truck. I was the one with the gun. The driver crushed his skull with a can of sea ration. In the 80s, on up into the 90s, there was a 9 or 10-year-old boy standing lookout on the corner. And when a shooting car comes around the corner to take out the store, he gets splattered on the floor. In the 90s, on up into the 2000s, he's a 9 or 10-year-old boy swinging a rock-loaded slingshot around his head. And when he loses his rock missile to fly and shatter against the armor of an American-made tank that belches forth a round that blows him beyond the thin blue line that surrounds and divides and separates our communities. Such is the nature of imperialism, imperial conquest. Such is the nature of the empire. Last week, we discussed male supremacy and patriarchy. I'm going to delve into that discussion a little bit more today and continue on. Again, I define male supremacy as male supremacy is a hierarchical supremacist system of organization among men, such that all power and wealth flow to men. Patriarchy is an ideological philosophy that justifies, supports, and maintains male supremacist organization through the subjugation, oppression, and punishment of women and children. Today I want to go in a little bit more to the subjugation, oppression, and punishment of women and girls. Have you ever heard of the expression rule of thumb? I'm sure you have heard it. It used to have much more common usage than it has today, though it is still used. Earlier, I think it was last week, reading a letter to the editor in the Chronicle newspaper, one of the letter writers referred to the rule of thumb in their letter. The rule of thumb had a very specific meaning in its original development. The institution of marriage is an integral institutional structure for patriarchy. It defined and structured the legal possession of women and children by men. Remember, women didn't receive the right to vote in the United States of America until 1920. It's a long history of women not being able to vote. It's a very short history where women were able to vote. In the 50s and into the 1960s, a married woman was not referred to by her name. She was referred to and addressed by her husband's name. If John Smith married Mary Jones, Mary Jones would be introduced as Mrs. John Smith. She no longer had her own individual identity. Her identity was tied to her husband. Women did not have property rights then, and marriage enforced these things. The rule of thumb deals with the beating of wives. It was legal to beat your wife. How else could the woman be disciplined? How else could her female children be disciplined?
Hi, how you doing?
The rule of thumb deals with a common sense approach to the beating of a man's wife. The rule of thumb, remember, it was legal to beat your wife. The rule of thumb said, do not beat your wife with a stick larger than your thumb. That's the origin of the term rule of thumb. Common sense didn't. Let that set. Rule of thumb stated, not beat your wife with a stick larger than your thumb. It was decorum. There's a proper way to beat your wife, and there's an improper way to beat your wife. This existed in this country. This existed well into the 50s. It isn't until the 60s, the late 60s and the 70s, that women in this country were able to develop enough political power and social power to begin to put a stop to the beating of women and girls in marriage. Now today, here in California and in other states, we have joint property rights. Man and woman get divorced. The woman is entitled to half the property of the relationship. This did not exist prior to the 1960s, the late 1960s and the early 70s. These are forms and expressions of the patriarchy. They were designed to subjugate and oppress women. They were designed to keep a woman in the structure of marriage, where she could be controlled, where she had no real legal rights. These things were done to maintain male supremacist organization among men. I'm going to end there on this subject today because I want to mention something about the current thing that's happening here in the Bay Area, in California, in San Francisco Bay Area. I'm located here in Oakland, California, and in Oakland, California, we have a large body of water that we call Lake Merritt. It's a natural body of water. It's connected through estuaries to the San Francisco Bay. And it's teeming with sea life. We're having a serious problem with algae blooms in the San Francisco Bay and locally here in Oakland, California, in Lake Merritt. The algae blooms take all the oxygen out of the water, and the sea life that relies on the oxygen in the water to survive suffocates. There are thousands upon thousands of fish and other sea life that are washing up on shores around the bay and around Lake Merritt. It's an absolute catastrophe. There are some people who are thinking at this point almost all the sea life in Lake Merritt has suffocated. Striped bass, sturgeon, bat rays can be seen floating in the water and washing up on the shores. The city of Oakland is making some attempts to repair the fountain in Lake Merritt that aerates the water. It hasn't been functioning for a while. If it were functioning, it would help with the oxygen, with the supply of oxygen in the water. There are community people and some organizations that are attempting to put bubble devices and other aeration machines in the water to help oxygenate the water, to help maintain what sea life is left in Lake Merritt. This is a huge catastrophe. We have miles and miles of shoreline. The fish are washing up. This is something that's connected to what's happening with the climate disaster that we're experiencing and living in right now. This is Mark G., Abolitionist, getting ready to sign off with you. Thank you for tuning in. And in leaving, I would like to use the words of June Jordan. June Jordan said, "We are the ones we're waiting for." Mark G. says, we, you, we, you, we, you, we. We are the ones we're waiting for. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Please join with me, the Prisoners of Conscience Committee, All of Us or None, formerly incarcerated, convicted, and family people's movement. And we say, what's the call? Free them all. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All power to the people. Ashe.